That was the first thing people noticed about her. Not her name, not her age, not the fact that she had been born enslaved on that same stretch of land. What people noticed was how calm the children became when she entered the room, how their screaming softened into whimpers, how their small hands reached for her dress before they reached for their own mother. By the time the family realized she had made a decision, it was already too late to ask which child she had chosen to save, and which one she hadn't. Her name was Eliza, and for nearly 20 years, she raised children that were never hers. The plantation sat just outside the low country marshes, where the air never quite cooled and sickness arrived every summer like clockwork. The house itself was wide and white, built to impress from a distance. Tall columns, long verandas, windows cut to catch any breath of moving air. Inside, the nursery was always warm, always loud, always alive. That was where Eliza lived most of her days. She slept on a narrow pallet just beyond the nursery door. She woke before the children stirred and lay awake long after they slept. She learned the sound of each child's breathing the way other women learned prayers. She knew which cough meant nothing and which one meant trouble, which cry was hunger, which was fear, which was pain. By the age of 6 months, the children recognized her footsteps. That mattered more than anyone understood at the time. Eliza had been assigned to the house when she was still a girl herself. Too quiet for the fields, the overseer said. Too thin, too slow. Someone decided she would be better suited indoors, a helper, a cleaner, eventually a nurse. By the time the first baby arrived, Eliza was already trained. She warmed milk. She changed linens. She rocked through the night while the mistress slept. When the child fell ill, it was Eliza who stayed awake, counting breaths by candlelight. When the fever broke, it was Eliza who wiped the sweat from the child's hair. People in the house began to say it casually, without thinking. She's good with children. It sounded like praise. It was actually a sentence that would trap her there for the rest of her life. The mistress trusted Eliza more than she trusted herself. That trust came quietly, and then all at once, Eliza was allowed to carry the children outside, allowed to decide when they rested, allowed to sit beside them when they ate. When the mistress traveled, Eliza slept in the nursery, not the quarters. When guests came, Eliza stood close, silent, present, always watching. The master liked to say it made him feel secure. She knows her place, he would tell visitors. And in a way, she did. Her place was beside the children. Her place was between sickness and survival. Her place was where decisions were made without anyone noticing. There were 4 children in total. Eliza raised each of them from infancy. She watched their faces change, their teeth come in, their voices deepen. She saw cruelty begin to appear in small ways. The way the boys snapped orders at the enslaved workers before. They were old enough to understand what they were doing. The way the youngest girl learned to look through people rather than at them. Eliza corrected them gently when she could. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but she never raised her voice, never struck them, never let her feelings show. That was her strength, and it was mistaken for obedience. What the family never asked was whether Eliza had children of her own. They assumed the answer didn't matter. She did. One child, a boy, born on the plantation, like her, small but strong. A quiet baby who clutched her finger as if afraid the world might take him away. If he loosened his grip, Eliza kept him hidden in her heart, because she knew better than to keep him anywhere else. She saw him when she could, at night, in stolen minutes. She sang to him the same songs she sang in the nursery, but softer, slower, as if trying not to let the house hear. She believed, for a while, that she could raise him too. That belief did not survive long. The child was taken from her before he could speak, not sold, not punished, simply reassigned. The overseer said the boy was old enough to be useful. The mistress said it was for the best. Eliza was needed in the house. The boy would be raised elsewhere, trained properly, not spoiled by too much attention. Eliza asked for time. Just time. She was told no. The house needed her. The children needed her. Her child did not factor into the equation when her boy fell ill. Eliza was not allowed to leave the nursery. The mistress was traveling. The children were restless. One of them had a fever of their own, a mild one, but enough to require Eliza's full attention. Eliza asked again. She begged this time. She knew the signs. She knew what sickness did in the heat. She knew what happened when care arrived, too late. The overseer shook his head. The house comes first. That sentence lodged itself somewhere deep inside her, and it stayed. There, her child died without her. By the time she was allowed to see him, his body was already cooling. Too still, too quiet, no breath left to count. Eliza did not scream. She did not collapse. She sat beside him and smoothed his hair the same way she smoothed the white children's hair at night. The same gentle motion, the same care. Something in her closed then, not snapped, not broke, closed. The next morning, Eliza returned to the nursery. She washed her hands. She lifted the youngest child from the crib. She sang. No one noticed. Anything had changed. That was the most dangerous part, because grief did not make Eliza reckless. It made her precise. And somewhere between rocking a child to sleep and wiping a fevered brow, she understood something the family never would. They trusted her with what mattered most to them, and they had trusted her with it completely. Sickness arrived the way it always did, quietly at first, a cough that lingered too long, a child who slept later than usual, a fever that came and went like a tide, retreating just enough to make the adults believe it had passed. Eliza noticed. Immediately, she always did. She felt it in the weight of the children's bodies when she lifted them, in the warmth beneath their skin, in the way their breathing changed at night, growing shallow, uneven, unfamiliar. She said nothing. That was the first decision. The master dismissed it as seasonal. The mistress waved it away as nerves. Children, they said, were always getting sick. The doctor would come if things worsened. There was no need to trouble him yet. No need to panic. Eliza listened and remembered. She remembered how quickly sickness had taken her son once care was delayed. How thin the line was between wait and see and too late. She also remembered the words spoken to her when she begged for help. The house comes first. The illness did not strike all at once. It moved unevenly, unpredictably. The youngest boy developed a fever first, mild but persistent. He cried at night and clung to Eliza's dress when she tried to put him down. She cooled his skin with cloths soaked in water. She rocked him until his breathing slowed. The family praised her. "You have such a way with them," the mistress said. Eliza lowered her eyes. Inside, she counted. Days passed. The fever eased, then it returned. Sharper this time and spread. The eldest boy complained of headaches. The girl lost her appetite. The youngest began vomiting in the night. One symptom layered over another, never enough on its own to alarm, but together, forming a pattern Eliza knew too well. She mentioned it carefully, just once. "The children seem weaker," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Might be time to send for the doctor." The master frowned. "They're fine," he said. "You worry too much," the mistress agreed. Eliza nodded. That was the second decision. The doctor arrived eventually, but not because Eliza insisted. One of the children collapsed during supper. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no blood. Just a sudden slumping at the table, a head falling forward into a plate. The room froze. Chairs scraped. Someone called Eliza's name. She moved before anyone finished speaking. She always did. The doctor examined them quickly. Too quickly. He spoke in vague terms. Seasonal fever, children's constitution, rest and patience. He prescribed tonics and told the parents to keep the children warm. He praised Eliza's care and reminded the family how fortunate they were to have someone so attentive. Eliza listened to every word. She noticed what he didn't say. She noticed what he didn't look for. She noticed how easily he left that night. The children worsened. Eliza did not sleep. She moved between beds, checking pulses, changing cloths, lifting small bodies, slick with sweat. She whispered comfort where she could. She measured time by candle drips and breathing patterns. At dawn, she sat back on her heels and looked at the room. This was the moment. Not a dramatic one, not a violent one, a quiet, terrible moment where knowledge met power. She could do more. She knew remedies passed down from women who had raised children long before this house existed. She knew how to cool a fever, how to ease breathing, how to help a body fight. But she also knew something else. She knew there would not be enough time for everyone, not without urgency, not without prioritization, not without choice. The mistress entered the nursery just after sunrise. She looked tired, afraid. "Are they going to die?" she asked. Eliza met her eyes. "No," she said. It was not a lie. It was a sentence with conditions. From that moment on, Eliza became indispensable. The parents hovered uselessly at the door while she worked. They asked her what to do, when to worry, who needed attention first. They trusted her answers without question. They did not know they had handed her the only thing that mattered. Authority. Eliza adjusted her care subtly. Nothing obvious, nothing that could be named. She stayed longer by one bedside than another. She cooled one child's skin more frequently. She woke one child to drink while letting another sleep through the night. To anyone watching, she was simply overwhelmed. To Eliza, she was balancing weight on a scale no one else could see. The children cried for her, by name. That was when the guilt should have broken her. It didn't, because grief had already hollowed her out, leaving room only for clarity. She was not choosing who to harm, she was choosing who to help. That distinction mattered. When the first child died, the house fell silent. There were screams then, wailing, accusations hurled into empty air. The doctor was summoned again. He shook his head and spoke of misfortune, of God's will, of fragile constitutions. No one looked at Eliza. Why would they? She had done everything right. The parents clung to the remaining children. They begged Eliza not to leave the room. They trusted her more than ever now. They did not understand that trust had already cost them something, and that the balance was not finished. Eliza washed her hands. She returned to the nursery. She knelt beside the next bed, and she made another decision. The second child did not die suddenly. That was what unsettled everyone. There was no collapse, no single moment that could be pointed to and explained away. Instead, the illness lingered, stretched thin across days, weakening the body inch by inch until exhaustion did the rest. The doctor returned twice. Each time, he adjusted his tone, less confident, more cautious. He blamed the heat, the marsh air, the sickness passing through the county. He never questioned the care inside the house. He never questioned Eliza. Why would he? She was the constant, the steady presence. The one thing that had not changed. Eliza watched the adults begin to unravel. The master paced the halls at night, counting his steps the way Eliza once counted breaths. The mistress stopped eating. Her hands shook when she lifted a cup. She hovered uselessly at the nursery door, asking questions she didn't want answered. "Are you sure you're doing everything?" she asked. Eliza nodded, double quotes. "Yes, ma'am." It was the truth. The surviving children clung to Eliza with increasing desperation. They sensed something slipping, something wrong, though they didn't understand what. Children always knew before adults did. They cried harder when she tried to leave. They woke screaming from dreams they couldn't remember. Eliza stayed. She always stayed. That constancy confused the parents. If something was wrong, they reasoned. Surely Eliza would panic. She didn't. It was the master who noticed first. Not because he was perceptive, but because grief sharpened suspicion. He realized that the sickness did not move randomly. It followed a rhythm. One child worsened, while another stabilized. One seemed to recover just enough for hope to return, while another slipped beyond it. It was never all at once, never chaotic, never uncontrolled. He spoke to the doctor in private. "I don't understand it," he said. "Why do some improve, while others don't?" The doctor hesitated. "Bodies are different," he said finally. "Care can only do so much." That answer should have comforted him. It didn't. The master began watching Eliza more closely. He noticed how she lingered longer at certain bedsides, how she adjusted pillows differently, how she whispered longer to one child while another slept, unattended. None of it was wrong. That was the problem. There was nothing to accuse. The mistress noticed something else. The children who improved were the ones who obeyed, the ones who were gentle, the ones who did not bark orders, the ones who said thank you without being told. She tried to dismiss the thought as madness, but grief has a way of connecting dots no one wants to. Eliza felt the shift. She felt eyes on her. Now she adjusted nothing. That was her strength. Had she panicked? Had she rushed? Had she shown even the smallest sign of fear? The fragile balance would have collapsed. Instead, she remained what she had always been: reliable, silent, essential. When the third child died, the house broke. Not in anger, in disbelief. There were no more words, no more theories, only a dull, crushing realization that something had gone terribly wrong and could not be undone. The mistress locked herself in her room. The master sat at the dining table long after the candles burned down, staring at nothing. Eliza wrapped the body. She did it carefully, gently, as if this, too, were part of her duty. That night, the surviving child asked her a question. "Why did they go away?" The child whispered. Eliza hesitated. She could have said anything. Instead, she said this: "Some people are needed longer than others." The child nodded. That answer felt right. The master heard that exchange. He stood frozen in the hallway, listening. Something about the words lodged in him needed longer. It sounded like a judgment. He confronted Eliza the next morning, not angrily, quietly. "You know more than you're saying," he said. Eliza met his eyes. "I know how sickness works," she replied. He searched her face for guilt, found none. That was when fear truly set in, because guilt could be punished, certainty could be restored. But Eliza offered him neither. She offered only competence and silence. The master considered sending her away. The thought lasted only a moment. He looked at his last surviving child, pale and weak, clinging to Eliza's hand, and he understood the trap. If he removed her and the child died, he would never forgive himself. If he kept her and the child lived, he would owe her everything. There was no choice left, only dependence. That night, Eliza sat alone in the nursery after the child slept. She stared at the small chest rising and falling. She thought of her son. She thought of the day she was told the house came first. She thought of the balance, and she waited. By the time winter arrived, the house felt hollow. Not empty, hollow. Sound carried differently now. Footsteps echoed longer. Doors closed more softly, as if the walls themselves had learned what noise could take away. Only one child remained, *, the youngest, too small to understand death. but old enough to feel absence. The child slept curled against Eliza's side each night, fingers knotted into the fabric of her dress as if afraid that letting go might make her disappear. Eliza did not pull away. She never had. The master stopped sleeping altogether. He sat by the fire long after midnight, staring into the embers as if answers might rise from the coals. He replayed every decision he'd made since the sickness began, searching for the moment things had gone wrong. He always came back to the same conclusion. He had waited too long. The mistress blamed herself. Differently, she blamed Eliza, not openly, not aloud, but in the tightness of her jaw, in the way her eyes followed Eliza's movements through the room, in the way she hovered now, questioning every action, every decision. "Is that necessary?" she would ask. Double quotes. "Yes, ma'am," Eliza replied. And it always was. The doctor came once more. He examined the child carefully this time, took notes, asked more questions than before. He prescribed stronger treatments, harsher ones, bleeding, purging, methods Eliza recognized as dangerous. She objected, quietly. "These will weaken the child," she said. The doctor bristled. The master hesitated. The mistress looked between them. Torn. In the end, the master waved the doctor away. "Eliza knows the child best," he said. The words tasted strange in his mouth, but they were true. That night, the child worsened. The fever spiked. Breathing became labored. The small body trembled beneath Eliza's hands. This was the moment, not the first decision, the last one. Eliza sent for warm water. She crushed herbs she had kept hidden for years, dried and wrapped in cloth, knowledge passed down in whispers and glances. She measured carefully, not with spoons, but with memory. The parents watched from the doorway. They did not interfere. They were past that now, as Eliza worked. The mistress broke. "Please," she whispered. "Please, save my child." Eliza did not look up. She continued her work, steady and deliberate. She did not say yes. She did not say no. She said nothing at all. The child's breathing slowed, then steadied. The fever eased, not quickly, gradually, like a storm retreating. After deciding it had done enough damage, the parents collapsed in relief. The master wept openly for the first time in his life. The mistress sank to her knees, hands clasped in prayer. Eliza remained where she was, watching. By morning, the child slept peacefully, alive, the only one. No one spoke of the others after that. Their names faded from conversation, replaced by careful gratitude and an unspoken understanding that something fragile now governed the house. Eliza was no longer simply trusted. She was revered, feared, needed. The master never confronted her again. He never asked the question that burned behind his eyes, because asking would mean hearing an answer he was not prepared to live with. The mistress avoided her gaze, torn between gratitude and terror. The child grew, healthy, protected. Years later, when the child was old enough to walk the halls alone, the master watched Eliza from a distance, and finally understood. She had never raised a hand. Never broken a rule, never defied an order. She had simply chosen where care flowed and where it did not. Eliza stayed on that plantation for many years. She watched the surviving child grow into adulthood. She taught them kindness and silence. When Elisa finally died, there was no investigation, no confession, no reckoning, only a house that had learned, too late, what it meant to place absolute trust in someone with nothing left to lose. The plantation outlived Eliza. That was the cruel irony of it. The walls remained. The fields continued to be worked. The house kept breathing, as if nothing fundamental had changed. New servants came, Old routines returned. From the outside, the story ended the way history prefers stories to end quietly, without disruption, inside the house. However, something had shifted, permanently. No one ever again spoke casually about sickness. No one ever dismissed a fever as nothing, and no one ever forgot who had been standing closest to the children when the balance tipped. The surviving child grew into adulthood with a strange reverence for silence. They remembered Eliza not as a servant, but as a presence, a constant, someone who noticed things before anyone else did, someone whose approval mattered more than praise from parents ever had. They carried those lessons into the world. Care was power, attention was authority, and trust, once given, could never be reclaimed. Years later, when visitors asked about the other children, about the empty rooms, the unused beds, the answers were vague. Illness, the parents would say misfortune, God's will. No one ever said Eliza's name in those explanations. They didn't have to dot Eliza herself, never spoke of what she had done, not once. There was no deathbed confession, no whispered admission passed down through generations, no journal hidden beneath floorboards. History would offer no proof, only absence. When Eliza died, she was buried without ceremony, no marker, no inscription, just earth closing over a woman who had lived her entire life inside other people's homes, raising other people's children, absorbing other people's grief. Some said she went peacefully. Others said she was smiling. No one could agree. But stories lingered. They always do. Former servants whispered that Eliza had known things no one taught her, that she had been guided by something older than law, older than punishment, that she had not sought revenge, but balance. Others dismissed it all as superstition, an attempt to make sense of tragedy by assigning intention where none could be proven. That debate never ended, and that, perhaps, was the point, because Eliza's story refuses to settle into a single meaning. If she was a murderer, she never broke a law. If she was a healer, she decided when healing stopped. If she was cruel, she was no crueler than the system that trained her to measure human worth by utility. And if she was merciful, then mercy, in that house, came with a cost. The parents lived with that uncertainty for the rest of their lives. They were never punished. They were never exposed. But they were changed. They learned what it felt like to wait, to plead, to depend entirely on someone who owed them nothing. They learned what Eliza had learned years earlier, kneeling beside her own child, powerless to intervene. The scales did not tip violently. They simply settled. This is not a story about poison. It is not a story about knives, or fire, or rebellion. It is a story about care, about who controls it, about what happens when the most intimate power in a household, the power to keep someone alive, is placed in the hands of someone denied every other form of agency. Eliza never shouted, never threatened, never demanded justice. She only answered a question the world forced upon her: who deserves to be saved? And once that question was asked, the house could never unlearn the answer. So when you think about Eliza, don't ask whether she was guilty. Ask something harder. If you lived in that house, if you held that power, if the law offered you nothing, what choice would you have made?